Group C, we have England paired up with Serbia, Slovenia, and Denmark battling it out in this group. We have to talk about England.
Have to.
Coached by Gareth Southgate and ranked number 4 in FIFA's rankings. I mean, the biggest question, the biggest narrative I see regarding England every single time I click on a video talking about this team is the narrative surrounding Gareth Southgate. And so I want to start there. Bro, is he really the problem? Let's figure this out.
I get sentimental and actually very empathetic when I look at this English squad under Gareth Southgate, because I think there's been an unrealistic amount of pressure on this English squad prior to this year. So when they made it in 2018 all the way to the semifinals, this was a new English squad. They had just disappointed in the Euro 2016 where they got outed by Iceland.
Jesus
Embarrassing. Christ. But the new generation that followed to try and fix that, dude, they went all the way to the semifinals playing really good football. Harry Kane, during that time, established himself as one of the best strikers in the world, and he has been that ever since then. And that was all under Gareth Southgate. He started what has become this juggernaut of a team. But people gave England so much shit for losing that semifinal.
Yeah, man.
And I was like, what the fuck? Like, that's an insane amount of pressure. It's a little harsh. It's very critical in my opinion. And what I went on to realize is that's just how it is when it comes to England, man. And I think you have to take those criticisms with a large grain of salt, man, because every single tournament since then, it has been nothing but England should be doing so much better. This English squad can't hack it. You know, they choke in the biggest moments. But, dude, then after that 2018 World Cup appearance, they go to the Euro final and they lose on penalties, man.
Penalties.
I don't think you can ask any more from a squad that achieves something like that. And I understand there still are points of criticism. You can always criticize a team. I'm just saying, don't let it get out of hand. Don't let it get out of proportion, because realistically, the only thing that you could say in that final was Gareth Southgate made some interesting penalty decisions. But even then, it's a lottery at the end of the day. England played so well. They were courageous. They were valiant. And they were still so young at the time. You look at the team that they have now, obviously, there's so many more players that are in form, playing at the highest level. But they still get criticized because in the 2022 FIFA World Cup, they lose out to France in the quarters. And I understand that was probably very disappointing, but it's France, man. They were runners-up. They lost the penalties against Argentina in the final. France-England itself was a final, you know? And Kane missed a really big opportunity, but can you really blame Southgate for that? I don't think so. So ultimately, what I'm getting at is I think Southgate should be criticized for some of the decisions he's made, but you can't criticize him as much as most people do.
I do think this is a tournament that makes or breaks Gareth Southgate.
Yeah.
This is the one. I see if they don't get that Euro Championship this year, if they don't win the final, I think he's gone, bro. And that's with 2 years left until the World Cup. So despite all of that, I do think the pressure is very much there for Gareth Southgate. And I do think that I agree with your points, but I also agree that the pressure should be there. Because you look at the talent level of this team, you look at how close they've gotten, to not get there and lift silverware after a 4th major tournament under Gareth Southgate, I think that's when you have to cut the umbilical cord on this managerial job, especially considering the level of depth that he has at his disposal. It's remarkable, bro. One of the deepest teams I've ever seen on the international level. Like, we're talking about Kane, Saka, Foden, Bellingham, Declan Rice, Kobbie Mainoo, John Stones, Pickford, if you want to throw him in there as well, Kyle Walker, just a few names. And then looking at the exclusion list, it's incredible how many players got left out only because the starting 11 is so strong. Marcus Rashford isn't here. Ben Chilwell, Dominique Solanke isn't here. Jadon Sancho, UEFA Champions League finalist Jadon Sancho. Raheem Sterling, Reece James, my very own Harvey Elliott isn't here. Tomori, the center back from AC Milan, isn't here as well. It's insane how stacked this team is. It is time for Gareth Southgate to finally deliver, and I think they might be able to do it, bro. I'm going to keep it real simple, real plain for you right now. I think they might be able to do it. I think this is the year where England could get to the final and finally get over the hump and bring the English fans a major trophy that they have been thirsting for so long. And that's why I do have that expectation. When it comes to England, they have to make the final.
If you compare this English squad to the last 3 major tournament squads that they brought, this team is light years better. And that's scary because those teams went to finals. They went to semifinals. If this team on paper is miles ahead of the teams that got them those results, then England have the most pressure at this year's Euros. And I think they should. They have the best midfield on paper. They have the best offensive line on paper. And in my opinion, they are also the deepest squad. You already listed out every single player, all of the studs, ballers out on the pitch, bro. They have to perform. And I have them as my favorites to win this year's tournament. They are title contenders for sure, but I agree. They have to go to the final minimum. And then from there, obviously, finals just, they could lose on penalties again, and I'll be okay. But if they don't get to a final, I say disappointment. Southgate has to go.
It's the form, bro. The form of these players is actually what I think differentiates the level of the squad compared to others. Bundesliga. Kane is arguably was the best player this past year with over 35 goals. And the only guy you compare him to is Florian Wirtz, who played for the winning team, which I think I would happily take that argument. But Kane was one of the top players in Bundesliga. You look at the Premier League, Phil Foden, by far the best player this year. Over in La Liga, Jude Bellingham and Vinny Jr., make your pick. But for a good while, it was Jude Bellingham who was outplaying Vinny Jr. and the best Real Madrid player for, I'd say, all but 2 months, in my opinion. So 3 out of the top 5 leagues in Europe have been dominated by English players that all get to play together in one offensive line. I think that's crazy, man. That's crazy. I actually don't know if I've seen this in my lifetime where so many players from one specific country are in such good form going into a major tournament. The front line of Bukayo Saka, Phil Foden, Harry Kane, and Bellingham is going to be ridiculous, man.
It's crazy,
ridiculous.
dude. It's literally like a video game when you look at the front line that England could put out. And that's one formation that they could do. But Southgate could do a completely different 4, and it would still be just as effective, honestly, because you could put Ollie Watkins, who had an insane year in front of goal, up top. You could put Cole Palmer on one side. You could put Eberechi Eze, who's absolutely balling for Crystal Palace, on the other side. And then beneath all that, you could put James Maddison, who had a stellar season at Tottenham this year. So it's ridiculous how deep this English squad is.
You see what they did today?
Yeah.
Against Bosnia and Herzegovina, Ollie Watkins up top, behind him Cole Palmer, Eze to the left, Jared Bowen to the right. There
you go.
And then behind him, Trent Alexander-Arnold and Conor Gallagher. These guys might not start, bro. Not a single one of these guys.
Not a single one of them,
That's
bro.
nuts. Who do you think is going to be you could say the defensive pivot behind these 4 offensive players that I mentioned? Because I do think the favorites will be Saka, Harry Kane, Bellingham, and Phil Foden. I think I'm predicting a Declan Rice, and surprisingly, bro, Kobbie Mainoo, I think, is going to get the start.
I wonder. Obviously, it will be Declan Rice. He's one of the best defensive midfielders in the modern game. But yes, dude, who is going to be his defensive partner? And it's going to be a massive decision. It has been Gallagher in the qualifiers. Not all the time, though. Maybe only like 50% of the time. Kobbie Mainoo, though, has had a really good 6 months. And he's like Gallagher in the sense that he's really good at decision making. He's actually pretty good off the pass from a midfield position. But he's also physical. He might be more physical than Gallagher. And Gallagher's a pretty feisty guy. I do just wonder who is Southgate going to pick. I honestly don't know. I'm going to go Gallagher just because he's a slightly more experienced. I think Kobbie, obviously, is still a teenager and he hasn't played at this level ever before. But I mean, put him alongside Declan Rice and he showed he can do it at Manchester United. Mainoo would be a good option too.
Yeah, I think it's ridiculously stacked from midfield to offense, but it's time to play devil's advocate. If you're against this English squad, I think the one place you're looking to take advantage of is ultimately their defense.
Yeah.
Where I think the best player is John Stones and Kyle Walker. But then it gets interesting with who becomes that pairing center back for John Stones. Is it Harry Maguire, or has Southgate moved on from that? And is he interested in bringing on a guy like Branthwaite from Everton, I believe? Who is he going to go with as the pairing center back? And then I think there's a slight argument to be made, but I'm defensive of it as well. Jordan Pickford, when you look at the top 5 teams in the world, he's definitely the weakest goalkeeper out of those 5. But the thing is, when it comes to Pickford in major tournaments, I've always been impressed with him and I actually love having at the back a true Scouser, if you will. I love his energy and his attitude. I just would say that maybe his absolute peak, the best version of himself, doesn't compare to like the best version of Alisson, of Donnarumma, and of these top goalkeepers. That's all.
That's actually a great point, but you're right. I've never really seen Pickford underwhelm at a major tournament.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't think you can really criticize it if Southgate starts him. But yeah, I think the center back situation is going to get really interesting for England. Stones has been kind of injured this year, right? He hasn't played as much football as you'd like him to. If he's healthy, then he should be completely fine.
Yeah.
I'm hoping he's fully healthy, as in he doesn't even have a little knock. If that's the situation, then I could see Southgate still going with Maguire because he hasn't fully transitioned from him. And that's just kind of the weird part. Maguire obviously is just such a character for Manchester United, and it's been tough on him, especially given that Man United just had their worst season in like 20 years. So I could see Southgate not picking Maguire, but if he picks him, I mean, he's been picking him for 6 years now. So it's just like, why wouldn't he if he truly does trust him? Another position that's up for grabs, though, is that left back position because Luke Shaw's injured ultimately. So who is it really going to be? It could be Kieran Trippier, who has played inverted before. It could be Joe Gomez, who was super useful for Jurgen Klopp when they had so many injuries back in February. I could see Gomez easily going to that left back position and just, doing what he does best, adapting and being defensive first and foremost. I wonder who's really going to take that left back position, though, under Southgate.
Yeah, Kwanzaa also plays at the center back position, too. He had a good season for Liverpool. I wonder if he gets paired up in that center back spot. Left back is interesting, but it's still a lot of quality to choose from, in my opinion. But that is the weakest sector. The defense, to me, is the weakest sector. But ultimately, man, I'm going finals for this team. I'm going finals for this team. And I want to know from the fans, from the people watching, where do you have this English team finishing this tournament as? Is it as champions? Is it as runners-up? Or are they going to disappoint? And then that's the question. What happens if they disappoint, like losing the quarters, bro? What happens?
They can't, man.
But what happens, bro?
This English team cannot fail. They cannot exit this tournament prior to the semis, man. They have to make it to the Final Four, and they have to win that semifinal, man. I don't care who they play, but my God, imagine if somehow they get like Germany in the quarters, or like France in the quarters, or Portugal, or like a really good Hungary side. Like, it'll definitely make for pure drama, but that's the Euros, man. There's so many good teams. It's up to the absolute best to make it to the final. I think England is that.
Who had more pressure going into a major tournament? England 2024 or Argentina 2022? Oh, dude, this is a lot. Man. The way we're talking about this team, this is a lot.
Wow. That's actually a crazy question. I think you'd almost have to say England only because all their players are pretty much from the Premier League, right? You have the Premier League Player of the Season in Phil Foden. Yeah. You have the La Liga Player of the Season in Jude Bellingham. They're all like, 21, 20 years old. You have the best striker in the world in Harry Kane. You have the best defensive midfielder, self-proclaimed, in Declan Rice. It's like there's just too much heavyweight talent. That's all the pressure in the world. Whereas maybe for Argentina, all the pressure was on Messi specifically.
You could say that. Yeah, you could say that. Yeah.
But obviously Argentina, they have, they're one of the most pressurized teams in the world at all times. So it's close for sure.
It's close, man. It's close because I look at this English team, the way people are talking about them. I'm scared for them to see what happens if they don't lift the title, bro.
Dude,
I'm scared,
dude. And and the thing is, maybe I understand a bit of the pessimism because if you are English, you can't say that England are going to win. You can't, because then you're setting yourself up for just depression. You know what I mean? And you can't look at the squad sheet and be like, oh, we have Foden, we have Kane, we have Bellingham, we have Saka. You can't be like, all right, we're going to the finals. And if you don't, man, that's going to hurt right here. Yeah. That's going to hurt right where it hurts, bro, in the heart. So I can understand why British people are just like, yeah, England always bottle it at the end, or they always choke, because it's the easier emotion to go with. But all I'm saying is that I'm going the opposite direction, man. I'm putting that pressure on England. They have to go to the finals. They have to finally win it.